in 90 years. Most famously, about 10 years before, when he was running for president as a Dixiecrat, he had said, "There's not enough troops in the Army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches." And he sat on this floor for just over 24 hours, and he made the case for why this nation should continue to segregate black and white. He started, in fact, by reading every single state's voting rights laws. Every single state's laws he read into the record, apparently as proof that every state adequately protected all of its voters and that no additional laws were necessary. He had friends in his cause to preserve segregation that came down to the floor and asked him long questions to give him breathers. At the end of that 24 hours, at around 9 p.m. the following night, he could go no longer. His final words in his 24-hour record-breaking filibuster were, "I expect to vote against the bill." But within hours, the bill passed. It became law. It established the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Justice. It was not nearly enough, but it broke 90 years of inaction. What you have done here today, Senator Booker, couldn't be more different than what occurred on this floor in 1957. Strom Thurmond was standing in the way of inevitable progress towards equal political and economic rights for black Americans. It was inevitable only because the people of this nation were standing up at that moment, the beginning of the civil rights movement, to make clear that progress was inevitable. And I say that that moment is so different from this moment because today you are standing in the way not of progress, but of retreat. You are standing in the way of retreat from the rule of law, retreat from our commitment to provide care to the most vulnerable, retreat from our common cause, at least we used to be in common cause, that we would have zero tolerance from corruption at the highest levels of government. And you have recognized rightly that this multifaceted retreat from everything that makes this country so special, and the speed of that retreat over the last 71 days, it is an exceptional moment. You've said that word over and over again. It is not normal what this administration has been doing to rob from us the values that used to unite left and right in this nation. And so you made this bold decision to engage in an exceptional tactic, to declare 24 hours ago that you were going to stand on this floor for as long as you could to try to raise the specter of failure in our fight against this retreat for our colleagues and for the American public. The exceptional nature we have heard so eloquently from you over the course of the last 24 hours, the massive transfer of wealth in this reconciliation bill from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy, the industrial scale harassment of journalists, of universities, of law firms, the destruction of the independence of the Department of Justice, the destruction of the American knowledge economy and the research economy, the use of the White House in violation of the Constitution to make those in power richer. You have laid out the case. And it's funny, I remember this from 9 years ago. When you're sitting in your spot, you haven't moved in 24 hours, you have no idea what's happening outside of this building. You don't actually know how many people in this country have engaged in the conversation that you started 24 hours ago. On one social media platform alone, there have been 150 million clicks on your live stream. This is a country of 300 million Americans. You have been able to pique a conversation here amongst our colleagues, who we need to stand with us eventually against this retreat, and across this country. And I think we are here as we reach a pivotal hour to just say thank you for having the courage, the audacity to bring us on this journey. And so my question is pretty simple. I think you will find when you finally leave this chamber that you have done something extraordinary, that you didn't solve the problem, that we are still a long ways from being able to successfully beat back this retreat, but that you have accomplished something extraordinary. And so I guess that's just my question. When you set out with this idea, when this was starting to germinate in your mind, my question for you, Senator Booker, is what did you hope to accomplish?
I thank my colleague and my friend again. He and I talked about this, that I was challenged by my own constituents to do something different, challenged by my own constituents to do something, challenged by my own constituents to take risks. My staff here, who should get a lot of credit for making it thus far, I'm not sitting down, but I'm mindful of what you said about Strom Thurmond. I'm mindful of that right now as I watch that clock tick for another 20 minutes. I'm grateful for my staff. I'm grateful for the parliamentarians, the clerks. I'm grateful for the Republican presiding officers. I don't know if I want to out Curtis on the note that the good senator on the presiding officer, forgive me, on the note he sent me, but this is the kind of specialness in this place that I love. I want to tell a few connecting stories. I think some of my colleagues know a few of these, but I want to explain why I started this whole 24 hours talking about John Lewis and good trouble. 60 years ago, when he was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he shook New Jersey as he shook the nation. When Bloody Sunday happened, there was a white guy on a couch in New Jersey who was watching TV and was so shaken. This lawyer said, I gotta go to Alabama. He realized he couldn't afford a plane ticket. So this man slumped back down on his couch, and then he said, at a moral moment in America, I'm not gonna let my inability to do everything undermine my determination to do something different. And he got up and said, okay, it was a meager calculation, but it was different. I can afford 1 hour a month of pro bono work. And he called around and he found this woman named Lee Porter, who was heading up an organization called the Fair Housing Council, and said, can you use a lawyer? And she's like, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. Yeah, we need some help. And they worked together and they designed a sting operation where they would send black families in areas of New Jersey that would not sell homes to black people, where usually the best public schools were. And if they were told the house was sold, they'd send a white couple behind them to expose that the house was still for sale and expose all of this. Well, they had a lot of success getting things written about the severe housing discrimination in my state. And he said that after about 4 years, I got this case file of a black family trying to move to New Jersey, and they were frustrated because every time they look at homes in the places of the best public schools, which happened to be white communities, they said they couldn't find a home. So they did the sting operation. They sent the black couple in. They were told this incredible house was not for sale. They loved the house, so when the white couple went, they just threw in a bid to see if it would be accepted. The bid was accepted. Papers were drawn up on the day of the closing. The white couple did not show up. The black man did. Lawyer Marty Friedman marched in, confronted the real estate agent. You would think 1969, a year after the Fair Housing Act, that he would capitulate, but he didn't. This lawyer gets up so angry, this real estate agent gets up so angry, he punches the lawyer in the face and sings a Doberman Pinscher on the black guy. They get out of there shaken up, and they start writing letters back and forth. The good owners of the home found out what was going on. They were so aghast. They said, let us sell the house directly to the black family. The black family moved in. And 43 years later, The baby from that family became the 4th popularly elected black senator in our country, me. Now, I tell that story because I started with John Lewis 24 hours ago, and it was John Lewis and a bunch of marchers on a bridge that influenced the destiny of my life and my family's life. We're all interconnected. As King says, we're all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in that common garment of destiny. But I want to tell you the second time John Lewis shook up my life. I was mayor of the city of Newark, and I got called to be on a TV show. I got called by a guy named Skip Gates, who I love, admire, and he calls me and he jazzes me up. He fills my ego. He just flatters me. Hey, I got this show called Finding Your Roots, Cory Booker, and you're a rising star. You're this hot shot. We should feature you in this. And I'm like, oh, great. Oh, don't say that, Skip. But okay, yeah, of course. And then I said, okay, well, who are you going to pair me with? And I thought it was going to be another young hotshot, up-and-coming politician in America. No, he goes, I'm going to pair you with John Lewis. And my heart sank a little bit. Actually, maybe it was my ego that sank. My heart got excited because I know how these shows start. They start with biographies. And so imagine the show starting. John Lewis, hero of the civil rights movement, literally bled the southern soil red for freedom and justice. And then it goes to my biography. Cory Booker, riding his big wheel in suburban New Jersey. The show was unbelievable, mountain and boy. But I got to meet John Lewis. I got to tell him that story, that he changed my life, and I didn't even know it. On a bridge in Alabama, changed the course of events in New Jersey that led to me. Third take on John Lewis. My colleagues know I got here in a special election in 2013. What all my colleagues might not know is I came here with a broken heart. My mom and I came here with a broken heart because I was elected in October, sworn in October, but also in October, my dad died of Parkinson's. That's why I got choked up reading these letters from people with Parkinson's. And so we came down here, we were grieving. My dad was not with us. My mom lost her husband of nearly 50 years, and I'm going to get sworn in. It's a big event, but my parents and my campaign decided, you know what we should do? Right before you get sworn in or brought over here to be escorted to the president, vice president, that you should go and sit with John Lewis. And so we went to John Lewis's office, and a lot of my colleagues from the CBC, a lot of my colleagues from the House, a lot of my colleagues like here who came over the House know his office. You walk into his office, and it looks like a civil rights museum, except he's in all the pictures. And this is John Lewis, we who knew him. This was him, mountain of a man. He had already prepared eggs and grits, a good Southern breakfast, and wouldn't let my mom and I get up, and he serves us all. And he humbly is saying, this is why I marched, this is why I sacrificed for history-making days like this. He told us how special this was for him. He told me that he would be right here where my friends are sitting, watching me get sworn in, and how proud he was going to be. In a sense, he stood in for my dad on this floor. And then boom, I'm a senator. I find colleagues and friends here, and I find a lot of colleagues and friends in the CBC. At that point, I was the only African American in our caucus, and found so many friends, so many heroes that have gone up from the Senate now, who looked at me, adopted me, helped me. Dick Durbin, you were amazing in those early months. And this is the next time I meet John Lewis for a moment that changed my life. Chris Murphy, Brian Schatz, remember this moment. It was during the 2017 healthcare debate, when I didn't know how we were going to stop that bill from passing and taking away 20 million healthcare from 20 million Americans. But John Lewis, hey, Cory, let's do something different. What you got in mind? And I said, well, John Lewis, I got this phone. It's very powerful. Let's do a Facebook Live. And so I open it up, Facebook Live. We meet in the Capitol, and then he says, hey, where can we go to sit down for a place? And I love it, my favorite place to sit. I watch Schoolhouse Rock so much, it's right on the steps of the Capitol. Let's just sit there and talk. Chris Murphy, Brian Schatz, first people out to sit with us. And the time lapse is amazing. First 2-3 people, then 10 people, then 50 people, then hundreds of people. I have it all. coming because of the moral magnetism of this man, John Lewis. And he talked to people that night who were looking for, what can I do? I'm just one person. And this guy who in his 20s, who was just one person and caused a heck of a lot of good trouble, he told them, don't lose faith, don't lose hope. Get angry, but let it fuel you. Be afraid, but know that's a necessary precondition to courage. He was amazing that night, and I know my colleagues remember that. And then there was the next time. Oh, Brother Warnock, you're going to love this one. The next time I was with John Lewis, Jimmy Carter had gotten a little sick. But then he got better and went back to teaching Sunday school. And I thought, this man is in his 90s. I need to go to Sunday school. And so who do I know? Because there's a waiting line. It's like people sleep out all night. I might have been a little selfish. How do I know I can get in? Call John Lewis. I say, hey, I got this great idea. Why don't we go to Jimmy Carter to watch him teach Sunday school? So I have the singular greatest road trip. I fly into Atlanta, we get into a car, and we drive all those hours to Plains, Georgia. Indeed, people were waiting outside, but it's John Lewis, come on in. We sit in the front row, I must be in the front row, and we sit down. And then this marvelous, incredible moment comes. Somebody comes and says, Congressman Lewis, Senator Booker, the President, First Lady would love to see you beforehand. It's my first time meeting President Jimmy Carter. But I walk in, I'm sort of on the sidelines. These two men are hugging each other. He and the First Lady. And the two of them whisper for a second, and Jimmy Carter walks over to me and says, I hear you're thinking about running for President of the United States. And he does something incredible. He says, I think you should run, but only if you run, and he pokes my heart, only if you run from here. The last time of the powerful moments I've had in my life with that man, that so many of us have had these powerful moments, the last time happened because of a man named Michael Collins. I know there are people in this room that got the same phone call I got, that it won't be long now, that John Lewis is going to pass very soon. He can't speak, but I know he would want you to have your moment to say goodbye to him. And what do I do? What do I do? To say goodbye to a man that's a legend in my life, a legend in our nation. What do you do to say goodbye to him? I wasn't prepared. I can't say I said anything eloquent. Michael Collins, God bless you, man. You put the phone by his ear and you just gave me my time to have a conversation with the man that would soon die. The man that changed my life, that helped my family get into a neighborhood that loved me and cherished me. God love Harrington Park. The man who stood in for my father when heaven brought him home. The man that showed me on the steps of this Capitol how powerful the people are. It wasn't about him, it was about them. The man that brought me to see a president who flattered every senator's ego, tell them what they want to hear, run for president. And so I said everything I could, but the last thing I said I remember very well. I said, I love you. I said, I love you. And I said, John, I know you're going to be in heaven looking down on us. And I promise you, John Lewis, that I will do everything possible, that we'll do everything possible to make you proud. The civil rights generation is starting to be called home. Leaders are leaving us. We in the CBC have lost a lot of greats. And I can't remember forget the promise I made to John Lewis, with all that he gave me, with all that he gave his country, that I said we would make him proud. And so this is one of those moments that John Lewis, he would not be sitting still. He would be calling me up and say, you still got that Facebook thing? I go, no, I don't really use Facebook anymore. But there's a thing called TikTok I don't know what John Lewis would say right now. I know what he said in 2017, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know what he would say. But John Lewis would say something. He would do something. He wouldn't treat this moral moment like it was normal. John Lewis knew what King said, that what we have to repent for, all of us here will have to repent for, is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of so-called bad people. What we will have to repent for in our day and age is the appalling silence and the inaction of good people. This is our moral moment. This is when the most precious ideas of our country are being tested, where the Constitution, and the question is being called, where does the Constitution live? On paper or in our hearts? This is the moment. Generations get them. We're on a crossroads here, folks. Healthcare is on the balance. Veterans are on the balance. Priorities are on the balance. Where's our priorities, America? More tax cuts disproportionately going to the wealthy? Greater budget deficits in the trillions and trillions of dollars? Or are we going to do something different like John Lewis would call us to do? He would call us to get into good trouble, necessary trouble, save the soul of America. But you all know John. Don't hate each other. Don't let anybody pull you so low as to hate them. I said this about the presiding elder. Different parties, but he showed me an act of kindness during this speech. He and I have talked about energy policy. He has amazing ideas. I want to partner with him. Don't hate anybody. Did the folks in Birmingham, did Martin Luther King, Fred Shuttlesworth, Dorothea Cotton, James Bevel, did they bring bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses to match the sheriff's? Bull Connor, thank you. I've been standing here a long time. They didn't do that. They were creative artists of activism. They called to the conscience of a country. They challenged our moral imagination, not to focus on hate, but focus on what is possible in America if we redeem the dream, if we dream America anew. That generation in their 20s and 30s, that's what they demanded. Martin Luther King didn't go to the March on Washington with a list of grievances against the racists in our country. He went there and called to the conscience of a country. He said he had a dream. That's what we need in our generation. Vision now. That's what we need in our generation. A vision to redeem the dream, to call our country together. Yes, there is a man in the White House who's the most powerful man in the land, and his partner is the richest man in the world. But as long as this is a democracy, that we can still protect, the power of the people is greater than the people in power if they use their power. As a great African-American woman author once said, the most common way people give up their power is not realizing they have it in the first place. I've been calling out names, folks, to tell them they have power. I read the stories of Deanna, of Wendy and Cassie, of Tanya, of Cameron, of Jean, of Susan, of Edna, of Randy, of Dylan, of Teresa, of Pamela, of Sally, of Mike, of Carol, of Rosemary, of Danielle, of Judith, of Elizabeth, of Sandra, Alicia, Maggie, Nibel, Laura, Michael, Robin, Mary, Allison, Ash, Roseanne, Carrie, Samantha P., Raphael, Will, Anthony, Sean, and so many more. As I read their stories here, because while we were elected, they are the power of our country. I've made mistakes. We all have. Both parties have a lot of mistakes to account for. The ballast of this country, what will anchor us to our ideals, what will call us to new heights, lift our heads, lift our hopes, what will call us to rise is each other. We need each other. We need a greater love in this country. We need a greater fight in this country. We need a greater determination. We can't act as if this is normal times. These people's stories that I wrote were calling out for help. Senator, help me. Someone help me. I'm in danger of losing my health care. Someone help me. I'm a veteran. Look what happened to me. It's not fair. I fought for this country. Help me, help me. I'm worried about my Social Security. And the rural office I go to is being closed. Help. People calling out for help. And what Americans do when people are calling out for help? They built an infrastructure. The greatest project ever, called it the Underground Railroad, where Quakers, white folks, joined with black folks to shuttle people to freedom. What did they do when people were worried and fearful? They called people together from across our country. Let's have a conference. Let's go to Seneca Falls. What did they do when they faced violence? Well, look at the people at Stonewall who stood up, who pushed back, who organized, who won. What do they do when the dogs are unleashed on us, the fire hose are unleashed on us? Look at what they did in Selma. I'm getting close to a record, folks, but there's a room here in the Senate named after Strom Thurmond. To hate him was wrong. And maybe my ego got too caught up that if I stood here, maybe, just maybe I could break this record of the man who tried to stop the rights upon which I stand. I'm not here, though, because of his speech. I'm here despite his speech. I'm here because as powerful as he was, the people were more powerful. But I remind you, all those people who believe like me that we've got to redeem the dream, turn again to John Lewis, because you all know the story, my colleagues, of when the man that beat him savagely, drew blood, cracked bones. Decades later, he was a congressman. That man brought his grandson with him to ask for forgiveness from John Lewis. I heard about this story when I was in the car in Georgia with him. What did you do, John? This man that so viciously beat you, wounded you, bruised you, battered you. What did you do when he came to ask you for forgiveness? What did you do? And a good Christian man of faith, simply said, every one of us needs mercy. Every one of us needs redemption. I forgave him. I hugged him. We wept. And I looked at the boy. This nation needs you too. John?
Would the senator yield for a question?
Chuck Schumer, it's the only time in my life I can tell you no.
I just want to tell you a question. Do you know you have just broken the record? Do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you?
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, order. The chair does not wish to take away from this moment, but I think the best way to honor this great accomplishment to our guests in the gallery to make a rare exception and let you stand to show your appreciation. I will not constrain my fellow senators.
Thank you. I'm Chuck Schumer. I have yielded for a question, and you asked me, did I know? I know now. I want to not quite wrap this up yet. I don't want to wrap this up yet. My mom's senator, my mom's been watching. I know Catherine Cortez Masto has a podium in front of her. She can give me a rest. I'd like to go a little further if we can, just a little further. I love, and again, I know people are trying to train each other, and all of our media operations, they give the worst images of the people of the other party. But I want to tell you, one of the funny tweets my staff gave me is something Ted Cruz said. Is he's around 19, 20 hours, he said, maybe I should pull a fire alarm. He's going to break my record. I'm going to pause in a moment if she has a question for me to Catherine Cortez Masto, because she's my mother. But I do want to just say again, 2 points to make if I can. One is how grateful I am to my staff. When we decided to do this many days ago, they were like, we have to do this. And we started preparing and working on this, and they did an extraordinary job. They were with me late nights, writing. I just feel guilty because they wrote about 10 books, and we didn't use all of them. They were really substantive stuff, pulling from Republicans and Democrats in critique of this moment, pulling from Democrats and Republicans, Republican governors that were saying, do not cut Medicaid. States that know, as my colleagues do, that have a trigger, that if the Medicaid funding goes below 90%, they stop the Medicaid expansion. My staff really worked hard to not make this just Democratic voices, to make it people in our country, that Republicans and Democrats, you heard mentioned in the speech, the Cato Institute, the Manhattan Institute, all people who are honest arbiters and are saying that what Trump is doing is wrong, that a budget like this that blows massive holes in our deficit, it will be something our children are trying to pay for. And what are they ultimately paying for that's caused this big deficit? It's trillions of dollars of tax cuts that people like Doge, multi-billionaire Musk will benefit from, but children won't. They did such a good job bringing together authorities on both sides of the aisle. I just want to thank them. I want to thank my cousin Pam and my family. Cousin Pam, like Chris Murphy, was here for the whole time. I want to thank Chris Murphy again. Who never stopped telling me we could do this, we can do this, we can do this, and said, I will stay with you. He's been with me on the floor. I hope you don't look as tired as I look, because you look beat, man. Do I look that bad? No. All right. I want to go a little bit past this, and then I'm gonna deal with some of the biological urgencies I'm feeling.